My name's John Hayes, John Edward Hayes, and I was born in 1939 in Del Norte, Colorado.
So Mr. Johnny Hayes, you were one of the first people I met when I moved here in 2008. You were one of the first ones.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Crestone?
Well, long time. Pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
I graduated from Moffat High School, and then I went to work for the county, and then my cousin from Alaska came down to see us, and he says, "You're not going anywhere with your life here. Come and go to Alaska with me."
Uh-huh.
So I went there, went to work for Isabella Coal, but you had to fly into the mining operation, and then you had to fly back home, or back to Fairbanks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his operators quit, and he says, "Would you like to go to work for me?" And I said, "Yeah."
So how long were you in Alaska?
I was up there for 3 years.
And then you came back here after that?
I came back here. My cousin got drunk, got on the fight, got thrown in jail. So I came back here then.
And what'd you do? When was that?
65.
And did you go back to work for the county or?
No, I went back to work for different number 9 contractors around the state, wherever they send me,
Uh-huh.
to New Mexico and Idaho and a few places like that.
So what's some of the biggest differences of Crestone today compared to Crestone when you first remembered being here?
Oh, there's lots of difference.
Does it seem like more people?
A lot more people now. Well, I went to school in this little building
Right.
till the 3rd grade or 4th grade.
How many people were in your graduating kind of class here?
I think there was 9.
9 people?
We didn't graduate from here. I went to Moffat
Mm-hmm.
then at the 4th grade. But there's been a lot of changes.
What did people do in their spare time that you remember from growing up?
Most people was old, retired, or old people was on old age pension. They didn't have Social Security then.
Mm-hmm.
And the others did whatever they could to work. Mainly the ranch supported most of the people. But the store and the post office, my mother was a postmaster, and my granddad was retired or doing the old age pension. And they had a rough life back in them days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you never worked for the ranch, but you probably knew a lot of people who did.
Yeah, I knew all the people that worked for the ranch.
What they talk about the ranch being like?
And Mrs. Collins was the best owner of the ranch there ever was.
Mrs. Collins?
Mrs.
Do
Collins.
you remember her first name? 'Cause my mom couldn't remember her first name.
I can't think of. I'm thinking it was Helen, but I'm not sure.
So where was the ranch? Like, where did they go off to work? Where was like the main place?
Well, it's down where the golf course entrance. That was the main.
Oh, but on the other side of the street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where the Colorado College entrance is now.
No, further out than that.
Further out.
That was, the main place was right beyond the Colorado College. That was the main headquarters, and then the Cowboys went to the next one.
So we have the 4th of July parade now. We have the Energy Fair. We have a few other, things that gather a lot of people in Crestone together, sort of like as the community. Do you remember anything like that really happening? Community barbecues,
No,
anything?
they did have a parade back even before my time, because my mom and my Uncle Roscoe would tell about it, and they'd have horse races up Galena Street to where the big old pine tree is in front of your store, and they'd make the swing there and then race
Back down?
back.
Better than a soapbox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they had that, and then they quit having parades.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, not too many people.
There's not too many people.
Yeah.
What's the smallest you remember Crestone being, population-wise, you think?
About 70 some
70 some.
was all. There was like Mrs. Holland, and I had to go chop wood for her when I was a boy, and she was one of the old ladies left, and Ollie Handy, and he was in his 80s, I guess, about 80, and then there was George Farnham. He had a few cows that he ran around town, and my granddad and all of them just turned their cattle loose in the town. There was grazing going everywhere. I mean, you could graze your cow.
So who was your grandfather?
My grandfather's name was Rawl Strader.
When did he?
He came here in 1900, and the reason he came here is because my grandmother had lung problems, and the doctor told her she had to get to a drier climate.
Drier climate.
They were from Joplin, Missouri. So my granddad came here, and they had relatives down by Hooper. So he came in on the train to Hooper, and then they was met there by relatives with a wagon, transported them to their house in Hooper, a ranch. And my granddad worked for him for a while, and then he got the job of being mail carrier to Liberty. And he carried the mail to Liberty until the ranch didn't want him crossing their land anymore. So him and the postmaster blew up the gate that they had locked down there with dynamite, and he had to go and spend the night in jail. And my grandmother was pretty upset with that.
Our relatives have been neighbors now then for 5 or 6 generations, is what that means.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. I wish there was a road to the sand dunes, that it's not all washed out still. That would have been nice. Because it's so close to here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, how old were you when you first started working?
I was about 11, and I started working in the hayfield with my uncle Roscoe over at Saguache. And my job was to keep the hay away around in front of the stacker and away from the sides of the stacker.
So at 11 years old, you're walking in front of a big piece of machinery.
No, it was just off to the sides and no danger whatsoever. Then the stacker they'd bring, my granddad, he used his horses to help put up hay down here on the ranch. But in the days of the horses, they'd bring the hay in, and then they'd back out, and leave the hay on the stacker, and it would dump it on the stack. Then they had two guys on the stack that would place it around. That's how they put up hay then. Today, it's completely different.
It's a big machine. Big expensive machine. I remember my grandfather telling me he used to pick potatoes by the time he was about 9 years old, you know. He used to say from when it got light enough to, you could tell what a potato was, till it got dark and you couldn't tell what a potato was.
Yeah, I've done that.
So, you had kids here in Crestone?
No,
No?
no, my kids were all born in Moffett.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Moffett for 7 years.
Were they, did they want to stay in the valley? Or did they get out as soon as they could, or?
No, they lived here till they were out of high school, and then they, of course, I had moved to Denver by then, so they wanted to go back and live in Denver. In their later years, that's what they knew. My one daughter, she married a man from Saguache, and my other daughters then married up in the Denver area.
So what do you think the differences are of when you raised a family to how people raise families in Crestone now, in this area?
Well, I don't know how they raise them now, but my kids liked TV and they liked riding horses and working in the garden and things like that.
What do you think Crestone's missing for families today? We have internet, we have television.
The main thing they're missing is they took Christianity out of the schools. And I remember sitting right in this room or the other room, saying the pledge allegiance to the flag, and we had our little morning prayer, and they don't have that anymore, and I think that's the downfall of the whole nation.
I remember saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You went to school here? In this building?
In this building.
And what years was that?
Oh boy. I can't remember.
The 40s?
Yeah.
What year were you born? In
I
39?
was born in 39.
Not here, right?
I was born in Del Norte.
Ah.
My folks had relatives in Del Norte, so therefore my mother went over there, stayed a day or two till she had me, and then she came back here.
And then you went to school right here, so until you went to Moffett?
Till 4th grade, yeah. Yeah.
And the ranch was pretty popular back in the 40s. That's about
Oh,
when it
yeah.
was really working
The
pretty
ranch
good.
was what kept
Mhm.
Crestone here, was the ranch. And it employed quite a few cowboys.
Yeah, a lot of my relatives.
And you had to be a regular cowboy to work down there on the ranch. With none of this training or what. They brought the horses in that was old enough to ride, and they issued each cowboy a horse, and he got him on him then and rode, boy. And if he got blacked off, that was his tough luck.
Do you remember Billy Hutchinson?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He taught me how to use a bullwhip.
Did he?
He did. I got lots of welts on the backs of my legs trying, but
Oh,
yeah, taught me how to do
Oh,
that.
yeah. I did a lot of riding with Bill Hutch.
See, he was a true cowboy to me.
Yeah, he was a good cowboy.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot about cattle, a lot about horses, and of course my granddad taught me a lot about horses too, because I had horses around me all my life. My granddad and my Uncle Roscoe would take their team and go out in the pinions to get wood, and it'd take them all day, and they'd bring back a little dab that I could go out there and cut with a chainsaw today in 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot harder living back then.
Oh, yeah, and of course my granddad raised pigs, and my Uncle John and him and my Uncle Roscoe would butcher pigs, and they had a smokehouse and a brine where they squirted the
Mm-hmm.
meat with brine
Mm-hmm.
and then smoked the meat. And I didn't know you weren't supposed to eat pork then. But I've eaten a lot of pork.
Pork's great.
I'm not supposed to eat it though, according to the Bible.
I get pork roasts from Matthew's store now, and they're good.
Well, it won't stop you from getting to heaven, but it's supposed to be bad on your body.
So yeah, as a personal question, I mean, ever since I was coming here in the 80s is when I started, there wasn't, a butcher shop or anything. Do you remember there ever being a butcher shop? It wasn't just out of some guy's house or...
Bill Hutchison Sr.
Uh-huh.
did some meat. But back then days, they didn't have refrigeration.
Yeah.
So they couldn't keep meat for very long. And my grandfolks had a spring in their front yard, and my granddad built a box,
Mm-hmm.
and the water was right around 40 degrees.
Nice.
And so they put all their stuff in the summertime there. In the wintertime, they had a different box that they put their stuff in, and that kept it from freezing, but it kept it cold on the outside of our house.
I've had there's a few people in Crestone that live outdoors all year, James Clark and all that. Yeshu when he was here, cool guy. But I used to give them all the onion sacks that we get, the little plastic sacks, and that's how they were doing their refrigeration. They just put whatever they needed to keep cold in the sack and tie it into the stream. So that still happens today.
Yeah.
So
So that water that I've caught fish that come down from Mrs. Ryan's creek, come down into my garden, and I've taken them and put them out into that spring and immediately kill them.
is it so
Because the
cold?
water is so cold.
That's that ditch coming off North Crestone,
Yeah,
and that runs through your place?
yeah,
Did it always?
always. My granddad was a caretaker for the Adamses that owned the Baca Ranch before Collins,
Oh.
and their home was right above our home.
Where Mary lives now?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and my granddad was a caretaker, and then when the water came through, he diverted it so we had garden water too, part of it. But he had to take care of all their yard. I remember him pushing an old lawnmower that he had to push
Mm-hmm.
to cut some of the yard.
And your mom was Miss Williams?
My mother was Margaret Strader Hayes Williams. My mom remarried my stepdad when I was 12 years old. And I never knew my real dad. He was a mining superintendent, and he worked in Idaho Springs. My granddad was a miner, and his brother was a mining superintendent. And my grandmother, when my granddad died, Granddad Hayes, my grandmother married his brother, Uncle Matt. And my granddad worked in mines from here to Bonanza to Idaho Springs.
I heard your mom made the best sugar cookies. Do you remember those?
My grandmother taught my mom how to cook, and my mom was one of the best cooks I ever knew. Yeah, she could really cook. She didn't like to cook, but she really could cook. My granddad, he was such an old fogey that he made my grandmother cook him biscuits every meal in the summertime, and she had to cook it on a wood and coal stove.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine the heat?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what why my grandmother didn't live too long. She died in 1946, I think it was.
That'd be a hard thing for me to change. Be cooking on a wood stove,
Well,
honestly. The amount of time it takes to do
Cooking on
that.
that old wood stove had a lot better taste and flavor than
I bet.
anything today.
It'd be great in the
Anything.
winter.
But it was hot, boy, when you had to cook on those stoves.
So do you remember there being a lot more water? Just kind of a lot more greenery, a lot more flowers and gardens in
Yeah.
Crestone than there are
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, I had a picture when I was a little boy. My granddad had scooped a path to the Adams place to take care of it, and I walked with him up that path. The snow was higher than me. I don't know how they ranch and things like that dealt with. Well, I know Bill Hutch had a snow plow that he hooked his horses to
Mhm.
and plowed himself a road out with that. But
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of Model A's completely covered in snow.
yeah,
You can barely even see them.
yeah,
And actually, in all the time I've been here, the snow hasn't been that deep.
no. One time, oh, it was in the 60s, and no, 70s. We got 40 inches here, and that's the last time I remember I came down from Boulder. I was working in Boulder as a plumber, and I came down here one weekend and shoveled all the snow off my cabin so the roof wouldn't fall in. But that's the last time we really had a lot of snow.
Did you used to be the town marshal or town constable?
Yeah,
Oh,
When was that?
oh boy. I can't remember.
When you were older or younger?
I was probably in my 40s,
So maybe like the 80s or the 70s this was?
70s, I think.
What was that like?
It wasn't good. I mean, there was lots of kids that wanted a hot rod, and then their parents would get mad at you for writing them a ticket. Then we caught Bill Hutch. He helped me some, and we caught a guy that escaped from jail. And my dogs, I kept them in the back of my pickup with me, and my dogs barked, and I looked over and here's this guy with a rifle pointing it right at me. So I quickly slammed on the brakes and got away from where he was pointing and pulled my gun and told him to get out of there. And so Bill and I took him then back to Saguache.
mm.
Was there hippies coming around in the 70s?
Oh yeah, there was lots of hippies. Most of them wanted to smoke pot. And I had one guy that lived in, he lived in Mary's chicken house. And he grew him pot and he could hide it in the sticker bushes, but you could still see it. And it looked a lot like stinging nettles.
Uh-huh.
And when I was a boy, there was an old Mexican guy that lived up above the store, you know, in those adobe houses
Mm-hmm.
Steve's got now.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Pacheco. And he grew marijuana up there because there was a creek that came down from above Harlan's all the way
Mm-hmm.
down to his place, and he watered, and he had fenced with chicken wire, and me and Noel Harlan, we'd watch the Phipps kids sword fight with these stinging nettles. So we got in there, we thought it was a stinging nettle. We pulled a couple up and we were sword fighting, and here come the old man Pacheco. But he was cussing us in Spanish, and we had to run like heck up in the pinions and get away from him. And then come back to Jack, or Noel's dad's place.
Was that CP Pacheco or Dan
No.
Pacheco?
No,
I guess Dan came later.
yeah, he was a lot later.
Jim
This-
Homer was telling me about a fellow named CP Pacheco.
You know, this guy's name was Pete. Pete. And I remember when I was a young lad, Noel Harlan's dad ran the store after Bill
Mm-hmm.
Hutchison. And I remember Pete would get high on that pot and he'd come to the store and all the women that was in there, he'd go around pinch them on the butt. I remember that, and I remember him getting kicked out of the store a few times by Jack Harlan.
And then, were you the mayor also
Oh.
Yeah,
in the 80s? I think Whitney said she had you as a grand marshal of the 4th of July
yeah,
parade.
one year.
How was that?
Thankless job. You know, when you try to work, you can't work and be mayor. You gotta devote all your time to mayor. And I got lots of enemies doing that, which I didn't like. And I primarily stayed here because of my folks. My mother retired as postmaster, then my stepdad started as postmaster, and he retired as postmaster, and so my mom didn't want me, I wanted to go to, had a good friend in Missoula, Montana, and we'd work together in Wyoming and in Denver, and he wanted me to come up there and start a plumbing business. But my mom didn't want me to go, so I stayed here.
So you've seen Crestone kind of grow and then kind of shrink a little bit and then kind of grow and kind of shrink. It
Yeah.
goes through its phases like in the 70s.
Crestone probably wouldn't be here today if it hadn't have been for the chalets and the ranch
Mm.
selling that land. They just wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, the people to support. That's why I stayed, because I moved down from Denver because there was a contractor by the name of Ralph Offel, and he built a lot of houses down in the Grants, and I plumbed a lot of houses down there.
I've noticed that like the different times when houses were being built, a lot of times the same person plumbed a lot of houses at one point, and then like a little bit later you can see like someone else doing it, and you can actually trace their work back, and a lot of them signed things, you know, a lot of the framing. So it's always been interesting for me. You can tell when something was built by who did the work.
I plumbed a lot of houses down
So, go ahead.
there. I even plumbed some from a contractor, friend of mine from Colorado Springs. They sent us over here to plumb some houses.
So mine was plumbed in 71, my house.
Yeah, I did some work on it, but I didn't plumb it.
Mm. Did you know Barbara Susans?
Yeah,
You did.
and her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Is that who owned your house?
Mm-hmm. The Susans.
1971.
Mm-hmm. It was the first one in Charlotte One.
Ah.
So that was like the first lot. There, the A-frame just down the street on Baca Grant Way, I think is like one of the first houses. But yeah, mine was the first in the chalets, like when it was officially chalet. So that was that time frame.
Do you remember when they opened up the Baca?
Yeah,
And did you get to go out there for the first time, or did you already know that land?
oh, I knew it. Yeah, when I was a young buck, I turned this old Pontiac into a stripped down, kind of like a Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle and my friend and I, and Carl Sizemore, we'd all hunt down on the Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were hunting down there, when the old depot caught fire and burnt down, and we were hunting down there, and we could hear this school bell ring clear down there. We also could see ashes was floating clear down there
Mm.
from the.
Yeah, that would have been a big fire, that one.
Yeah, we knew that something was really burning.
So what'd you do?
Wasn't nothing we could do. It was just getting close to dark, and I think I'd killed a deer. We loaded it up and came on home.
Did you get in on bucket brigades?
No, it was completely burned down by that time, completely.
So my grandpa always told me stories of getting stuck in the sand.
Oh,
in,
yeah.
In whatever vehicle.
Yeah, I got stuck in the creek, Willow Creek down there, and I spun that old. It was only two-wheel drive, and I spun it. I threw water up all over my uncle and another passenger. And they didn't like that a bit. That cold water.
I can picture a stripped down Pontiac like that.
It was a '36 Pontiac.
Oh.
My Uncle John gave me, and there was something the matter with the wiring.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Larry Mitchell, we took a cutting torch and cut it all down, and Larry's brother rewired it for us.
Mm-hmm.
Something in the wiring, it wouldn't run right.
Mm-hmm.
After he rewired it, boy, that thing had run just like a top.
There's not too many wires in those things, too.
Not then, no.
Mm-mm. Windshield wipers.
Yeah, the hand wiper.
Yep. So, what would you say to someone moving to Crestone now? With the lessons you learned?
Well, I think it's a good place to live. I'd rather live here than anywhere. I've been all over the United States except east. I've been as far as St. Louis and all west, and I liked it here better than anywhere I'd lived. I don't know why, I just like it here.
Mm-hmm.
The winters are generally not that bad, and the summers are cool,
Mm-hmm.
except for the bugs.
Except for the bugs. Well, I've seen you on a four-wheeler ever since I knew you, so you're out there, at least
Yeah.
in the elements every day.
Yeah. I generally ride it to the post office about every 3 or 4 days to get food at your
Mm-hmm.
grocery store and get my mail and Just running around.
It is a beautiful place.
And the good thing about it is, the town has agreed to let four-wheelers run around in town if you got a flag on
Mm-hmm.
it. And South Fork is the only other town in the valley that'll let you do it.
Yeah, the sheriff said something about he'll kind of turn his head for the people out in the Baca until
Oh,
until it becomes like more of an issue and he hears reports about it. He'll just kind of look the other way.
Well, I wouldn't, that's good to know, because I wouldn't want to go out there.
Mm-mm.
I don't go up into the forest either, because you gotta have a forest tag, and I don't have one.
When was the last time you were in the Baca?
Boy, I think it was about a year ago. I went up there to see the Dr. Daniel Tars. I went up there, and that was the last time.
Have you seen the Shoemay Center?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the biggest building around here.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, did you guys go to Alamosa or Salida for groceries, or?
Well, before my time, my mother and my Aunt Gladys and my granddad and my grandma, they'd get up early and they'd ride a team to my Uncle Joe Cotton's place down by Hooper, and then they'd go from there on to Alamosa and buy groceries, come back, stay overnight there, and then come on to Crestone. They cut through the Baca Ranch to come to Crestone, and my mom said that $5 would buy a whole wagon full of groceries. And my granddad was going to leave and go back to Missouri, and they went to Alamosa, and my granddad had to go to the latrine, and he lost his wallet in the latrine, and he couldn't find it, so they had to stay here in Crestone.
How often would they do that? Once a month, or
Once a month.
Once a month. 2-day trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's different.
But yeah, when I was a young lad growing up, we had a grocery store here, and Bill Hutch, and that ran it before Jack Harlan. They always let us have a, charge by the month, and then we bought most of our groceries there, and sometimes we'd go, like my uncle, he barbered in Saguache, so he could bring groceries from Saguache to the family back when I was a young lad, around 9 or 10. And we did sometimes go to Alamosa, but not too often.
So what were some of your better memories? Was it hunting, fishing with family, or anything?
Well, I just stayed. In the wintertime, we had a lot of fun. The Phipps kids that lived up above town, where Andy Myers lives now, they would flood the creek, and it would freeze over, and you could get on your sled, and you could ride the creek from their place all the way down over here to the White Bridge. And it was really
So that's
fun.
how you do it. You gotta flood it so that the sticks aren't in the way.
Yeah. And of course, we'd have to cut all of Sam Tucker's fences out, where he'd put them up to keep his horses in, so we didn't run into them fences. But boy, that was fun. We never got cold. And all the town kids went and played on
My grandpa used to ice skate it. What he'd say.
Well, it was so rough that
Mm.
you couldn't hardly ice skate on it. And we had a pond out there, they called it the Humps. It was out close to where Pam Grip lives. And it would freeze over nice and flat.
Mm.
And we'd go out there and skate. But as kids, we had lots of fun. Willie McDowell and I'd walk clear to the spillway in the summertime, fishing. And we'd catch a few fish, 2 or 3.
So were you pretty good friends with Willie?
Yeah, I knew him all my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and
There used to be a dance hall over the post office.
yeah,
Did you guys go dancing there?
I never did, but I've been there during the dances, and that old place had started moving. I don't know what kept it from, but it had started.
And was there an indoor shooting range there?
Yep.
Well, how did that work?
Well, they welded a catcher for bullets, and it was about this big, and it came to a triangle back in the back, and then on the bottom they had a threaded piece of pipe with an end cap on it, and it caught all the bullets. And 22 couldn't shoot through it, you know, and they'd go up there and practice. And, you know, it was a pretty good shot from the back of it clear to the front. And it was also a Masonic lodge. And my dad remodeled it all. And the post office was down there where Frank Snyder has got a little building across from the town hall. Still there. That's where the post office was. And then my mom moved it when my stepdad was here. They moved it up to where my place was, in the old house that I tore down. And then they moved it back down when my dad got through remodeling the old store building.
What was your favorite time frame that you can remember in Crestone?
Mhm. I really don't have one because we always had fun at whatever we did. It was good times. I had more fun when I was a kid than ever in my life.
Yeah, that's true for.
We did. We always stayed busy. And we always had the McKees, they was about, I think there was 10 McKee kids, and the Phipps kids, there was about 10 of those,
Mm-hmm.
and we always had our rivals with them.
Nice.
Not with the McKees. The McKees were always on our side, but we had our rivals with the Phipps.
My grandpa told me like in the 30s and 40s, one of the most popular things to do would be like just get some buddies together and then other buddies of other towns and then just kind of, you know, fight it out for fun. Those kinds of things.
We never,
I
we
think-
did.
I think Edna told me, I think it was Edna, that the boys would go up to the spillway and play cowboys and Indians with real 22s. No.
No. We knew better now. My granddad would have not let me have a gun. I've had a gun since I was 8 years old, and no. But me and Jim Homer and Jimmy King and Ronnie McKee, we'd go over on the Grant with our 22s, and we'd poach us a deer every now and then.
Jimmy King, is he the one that went overseas and served? And
No.
No.
He died at about 53 years old. he had cancer. He was a good friend of mine. Him and I did a lot of
Mhm.
hunting and everything.
Did you ever know Charlie Stewart?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie Stewart was a really
He was a fun guy.
nice guy too.
I have his cowboy boots.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he gave them to my grandpa, and my
Oh,
grandpa
yeah.
gave them to me. Unfortunately, it's size 9, so they are
Huh.
fancy. Yeah,
Charlie
rattlesnakes.
Stewart
and
was
some other
a
stuff.
nice man.
Elaine was saying a bunch of boys did go over to World War II. Do you remember any of that? And that one of the King boys didn't come back?
I didn't know him because he was before my time.
Okay.
But yeah, Jack King, he got killed over there. Bob went too, but Bob come back.
Bob King?
Bob King, yeah.
So are you the elder of Creststone right now, you think?
Me and Jim Homer well, Noel Harlan doesn't live here. He lives in Alamosa, but he's 10 days older than I am.
Okay.
And we buddied around all of our lives. We're still good friends. And we did a lot of camping when we were kids. We camped one time up along the creek here, and Shirley McKee was going with a guy by the name of Gene Gray. Anyway, they found out from Ronnie if we were going to have any guns, and Ronnie said no. So we were in our little lean-to sleeping, and I looked out and I could see this furry thing coming. And I told my friend Noel, I said, hey, I think there's a bear out there. And so it was Gene Gray in an old fur coat. And he come around and he called up on Noel. And Noel says, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to stab you. And then he went out, of course, and us guys just had our shorts on. And we went out, got around by the fire then, and of course he snuck off like, and we knew then that he was playing a hoax on us. And so he took old Noel's shoes and tied them up by the shoestrings and hung them on a limb where we passed under the next day. There's a bad biter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had lots of fun when we were kids.
Yeah, my grandpa has great memories of here growing up. Did you know my great-grandmother, Modi?
Yep.
Yeah. Heard some funny stories about her. She was really mean.
Yeah.
No? She was
Never
nice.
mean to me.
Oh.
She couldn't see very well.
Mhm.
She had these thick glasses. And she'd always come over to, when Carl had his store there, she'd come over in the afternoon. And she'd just sit and visit with people. Carl was a nice guy too.
Mhm.
He helped me work on a lot of old cars.
Mhm.
But Bill Stewart had an old Model T motor on a he fixed it so it saw wood,
Mm.
like slabs.
Mhm.
And so I borrowed it from Bill, and Carl helped me get it running, and man, I sawed a lot of wood around town with that old saw.
Did you ever stay into old cars? Did you ever like them?
Oh yeah, I liked them, but I never had the money to work on them, my Uncle John gave me that 36 Pontiac. He gave me a 42 Chevrolet, and that was a good old car, except going to Moffett one time. Gene Gray was trying to pass me in an old 39 Pontiac, And I said, you can't outrun me, I gave her some more gas, and one of the pistons stuck and jerked the wrist pin out, and the rod went right through the side of the motor. And I drove that thing back to Crestone
With the thrown rod.
with a thrown rod. It did a lot of clanging, but
Yeah, those old trucks sitting in people's yards, do you remember like who used to drive that truck and stuff like that? Like there's one in Sean Homer's yard.
I don't know that one in John Homer's yard,
But they're all over.
Yeah, mine only had that 48 Ford, that purple,
but yeah,
maroon. It's only got like
that was
50,000 original miles on it.
that was
Everything's
Bill
original.
Bill Hutchins.
Yeah. Yeah, their little church car, basically,
That
to
was
go
a
about a
good-
mile in.
That was a good old car.
It's still the exact same. Nothing's changed. I
Yeah.
rebuilt the starter on it, which came in 4 pieces.
Wow.
It's like
Yeah,
this.
it's a nice car.
Is it running now?
Yeah, it runs great.
Where is it?
It's sitting in my grandma's garage with the old ambulance for Crestone, the big green thing.
Yeah,
That's a fun one.
an old Dodge, wasn't it?
Chrysler, 47 Chrysler.
Yeah, the good old days are gone.
Got a half hour tape left.
Okay. And then how long do you need to transfer?
About 10-minute changeover.
Do you remember when the Bacchus started
Yeah.
and how was that?
Oh, it was all right. I at that time I didn't live here,
Okay.
but I'd get reports from my folks, and they were glad to see it come because it brought more
Yeah,
stuff, more business.
town really would have died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was living in Denver at the time.
Did you work on the, like, when they started cutting trees and all that action?
No, I didn't. They was pretty well had the Charlie #1 going, building pretty good when I came down. My mom and my dad knew they knew Ophel pretty well, the contractor. So therefore they helped me get a job with him. And as soon as I'd plumbed one of his houses, why he kept me plumbing them. So I then moved back down here and stayed plumbing. Came here, back down here from Denver, I think it was in around 69 or 70, somewhere in there. But I plumbed a lot of houses till my knees got so bad that my boy said I had a chance to go and be a plumbing inspector here in the valley. So he says, you better go and do that, because your knees are too bad to crawl anymore. So I went and did a plumbing inspector till that ran out. The state was not getting enough revenue from it, so they cut me back down to 1 day a week, and I couldn't hardly make it on that, so I had to quit them. And then I was getting old enough to retire, so I retired.
How do you make it now? Do you have Social Security?
Yeah,
And it takes care of you enough?
yeah, and my daughter, she's an attorney in Denver, and her husband's CPA. They got big money, and she gives me money every month. She doesn't need to. I can live on Social Security, but they got it, so they give it to me.
Yeah, it got more expensive to live in Crestone, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I didn't own the property, that was 3 generations living on it, and own it outright, I couldn't live here. Because I wouldn't make enough money. But since I already own it, and my daughter pays my taxes.
Yeah, because taxes have gotten a lot more
Yeah.
expensive.
Way up.
Electricity,
Yeah,
propane.
exactly. Electricity's terrible.
Broccoli's pretty expensive too.
What is?
Broccoli?
Yeah.
Yeah, meat, that's all gone up.
Oh, meat's terrible.
It's gotten more expensive than Social Security was designed for.
We used to raise our own meat. And my granddad had butcher, and boy, that was good meat. But you know, growing up, those old timers, they knew how to take care of their meat.
They knew how to do a lot of things. They
Yeah.
knew how to fix cars, take care of cattle, horses, you know,
My
fish,
gran-
hunt.
I still have my granddad's farrier forge
Oh, yeah.
that he did his own horseshoeing, and he had 2 wonderful team of horses. You could put up hay with them, or you could pull logs with them, or you could do anything with them.
You know, nowadays, if someone's a farrier, that's an amazing skill.
I went through the farrier school too.
See, to be able to work on cars, to work metal, I mean, chop all the wood, do all the things he did, that would make you a Renaissance person nowadays. Back then, it was just survival. It's fun.
Yeah, back when my granddad, they had an axe and a cross-cut saw to get their wood. Not like a chainsaw today. I don't know what my granddad would have done if he'd had a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And he was a hard-working old man. He used to plow the bottoms in Missouri with a team of horses, and from morning till dark behind a plow.
What was his name?
Roll straighter.
So my family's from Missouri too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots, you know, when my granddad, Farnhams were from Missouri, they knew each other in Missouri. And my Mrs. Farnham was mad at her boys because they took a wagon apart and put it up on top of the schoolhouse and put the wheels back on it, and there it sat.
Do you remember the old cow that Kurtz had that ended up in various places in Crestone?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
What was really fun, me and Noel Harlan back of his store we dug into the ground and made us a wood top. And George Farnham always had to go wrangle his cows with his old horse at night. And one night me and Noel was in this, or it wasn't night, it was in the evening around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Anyway, he drove his herd of cows over the top of that. And one cow stuck her leg through. And it was so dusty we couldn't hardly breathe. And we come out of there, and here come old George on his horse, and he says, "You damn kids are gonna kill one of my cows." So he went down. The next day he went in and told Jack, Noel's dad, about it. So we had to tear down our fort.
You know, they got all these creeks, they all have names, Willow Creek and Spanish Creek. When did those get named?
All the way back when this was a Spanish territory.
Oh, so they have the same names way back then?
Yeah. They were all named before my time.
That's a good question. Okay, you know the flat top mountain right there. What do you call that mountain? You call that
Well,
peak?
today, back in the old days, it was Crestone Peak.
Mhm.
And then some idiots wanted to name it Challenger. And then if you can look, some days you'll see a little peak in front of the flat one, and that's the one they claimed should be Crestone Peak. But I don't agree with them. I've always called it this flat one Crestone, and that's what I've always called it.
I've noticed a difference, like, of people that have been here. You know, you can tell how long they've been here by if they call that Challenger or if they call it, oh no, that's Crestone Peak. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's Crestone. All the old timers called it Crestone.
Mhm.
We didn't know anything about Challenger.
Have you ever been up there?
I've been beside it, but I never wanted to climb it because, well, I just didn't think it was worth climbing.
Worth dying?
Yeah. You know, a little rock can come out like that and hit you in the head, kill you.
Yeah, and there's just a fellow a few days ago who died up there. Were there people coming in back in the day and trying to go up there and not
Well,
coming
there's
back?
some old timers. King climbed it once, and I guess he planted a little flag there.
I heard you used to be able to drive up pretty far, those things. You know?
No. You could drive up Willow Creek, Willow Creek, no, South Crestone, up towards Willow Creek Park for a ways,
Mm-hmm.
but that was it. That's as far as you could go.
Yeah, it used to just go straight up. There wasn't all those switchbacks
Uh,
on the right side next to the fence lines there.
to get to Willow?
Yeah. Used to shave like 45 minutes off
Yeah,
that walk.
That's a lot of switchbacks.
Yes.
Did you used to ride up there?
Uh,
Horse?
yeah, I have, and I've ridden horses into North Crestone Lake and to South Crestone Lake, and Willow was always too rough, but they've redone it. They hired an old fellow from Idaho to redo that trail,
Huh.
and I hauled his groceries up for him in my old Jeep a few times when he'd come down and buy them. And he fed his men good, boy. He'd buy a case of apples and things like that for them to eat.
I think Jim Homer told me they used to get German POWs to go work on the ranch. Do you remember anything about that?
The POWs leveled this off for this schoolhouse, so that's what my granddad told me.
Huh?
I know there were some German refugees that, Polish and things like that. There's some of the names out in the valley.
Huh?
Don't know much about that. That might be something you ask Jimmy, because
Yeah.
there's some very interesting names out there that own things.
And the WPA, you see, you know why you go from Crestone out, you make a jog?
No, I do not know why.
My granddad told me that you could not ride a horse or take a wagon straight because there's a big bog out there and you'd bog down.
It's all wet.
So you had to make the jog.
Okay.
So
That's a question I get a lot, actually. Why does it do that? I always thought it was just properties.
No.
Huh.
No, my granddad said you couldn't, a horse would actually go in above his knees.
Well, the road into town used to be the Galena, right? Going out of town and reconnecting.
past Scott's and Steve's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the railroad line.
Oh, the old railroad went out there. You can
Uh,
you can still see it, and if you go down into where your stepfather owns, well, you can see where the old how it went. And one time the railroad car got away with a load of ore on it. Got away from him and went clear out there where George White's house. It was out. George White's place was. Do you know what it was? Well, there's a little old log cabin as you're coming in, way out in the middle. After the second,
Oh, that?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's where the railroad car stopped.
Was it full of gold?
It was from old Orient, it probably had gold ore in it, because the old miners later came in, took those pillars that held it up out because of the gold.
Yeah, it wasn't that there was a lot of gold in the rocks here. Like for a
Yeah,
while, you could
yeah.
just pick it up off the ground. It was just
Yeah.
getting to it.
In that old mine, it produced quite a lot of gold.
All right, well, we can get close to wrapping up. I have two more questions. One is, what do you think the most important things to remember are?
Just growing up there in my childhood, we had lots of fun.
And then, do you have any hopes for Crestone in the next 5 or 10 or 50 years?
Well, I hope so. I hope. Jack Harlan always said this was a spiritual place, and I believe him. I think even the Indians thought it was spiritual here. And my Uncle Noah showed me a place down in the chalets where there was an Indian camp. So I think it'll do all right.
Well, go ahead.
It's got good bones. That's all. You know, it's got good staying power.
What about how it grows?
How what?
How Crestone and Nabaca grow? Are you worried about it? You sound like you feel okay.
They tried to annex into us once, but the town people turned them down. We don't want that. We don't want them telling us what to do. And I don't think that'll ever happen.
You think you'll run for mayor again?
No, never. I don't. It's just too. I'm too old and too set in my ways for that, I guess.
Well, I sure appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Yeah. Too bad some of the other old timers couldn't have got in on it. But anyway, I ain't got too many more years here. I'm getting pretty old. And my knees are shot. I had this one replaced, and I swore I'd not get this one done because it almost killed me. My grandson that's dead, Jack, he took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, that kid was hard on me. He'd make me do those exercises whether I wanted to or not, boy. But that's what's the matter with me now, my knees. If my knees were good, I'd like to go to some of the spots up on them mountains where I've not been before. I've been to Dead Man Lake. Boy, was there some good fishing there. You ever been there?
No.
I've been up the trail, but I didn't make it to the lake.
Pretty lake, 2 lakes up there. One to the south, like San Isabel, and one to the east, and the one to the south don't have no fish in it. But and by the way, my granddad used to carry fish up to North Crestone and to South Crestone with his mules,
Wow. And stock it?
stocking.
Wow.
But South Crestone would raise fish for a while, nice fish, and then they'd all freeze out some winters. They'd freeze, it was not deep enough.
There's some big ones up there now.
On Crestone,
Yeah.
there's some big ones.
And they follow your lure, and then they'll follow it right up to the shore and be
Yeah,
like,
and then go.
see you later.
Yeah.
buddy."
I had a friend that, I worked when I was a young buck, I worked for a well driller, Elmer Biggs in Moffett, and he had some friends or relatives in Colorado Springs that were doing scuba diving, and they came over and they dived down in North Crestone. And it's 65 feet at the deepest end, on the west end, or I mean the east end, and about 45 on the shallow end.
Wow.
But they said they saw some submariners in there, about 25-pound trout.
Wow.
And they said that on the deep end there's a layer of rocks that had tons of fish eggs on them from them big old fish, I guess. I didn't know they did that, but that's what he said.
Some rue.
He would have liked to taken a spear gun, because he said those fish would come up from here to you from him, and he could have,
I think that's the only way you could get them.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they won't bite nothing. I've done like you.
Any last thoughts?
No? Just thank you for
Yeah, thank you.
inviting me in,
Oh man, thank you.
and I hope to have many more years, but who knows?